Stand for the
Oh,
pledge.
I forgot the pledge.
okay.
And I'm sorry, whatever.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll have a moment of silence. Thank you. Now, Ms. Motko, would you like to take over?
Approval of the agenda, please.
Move to approve.
Second. I usually don't do this with Brett, and I'm sorry.
It's all right. Hey, obviously I'm out of it, so there you go. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Anyone wishing to abstain? Thank you.
Thank you for your help. Public comment, I don't believe we have any speakers tonight, so we'll just go to number 5, policy changes, and we will start with policy 1.404, appeals to and appearances before the board. The proposed policy would add language that speakers addressing the board must be on the items that are on the agenda. And let me show you the proposed language that is highlighted in yellow. And just so the committee knows, the Tennessee law regarding public speakers states that a governing body shall, for each public meeting, reserve a period for public comment to provide the public with the opportunity to comment on matters that are germane to the items on the agenda for the meeting.
I submitted this policy once I realized that the law stated this. I am like everybody else, I didn't know that. At TSBA, this was brought to my attention that the law does state that we need to be addressing items that are germane to agenda items. I have a list of those districts that already have put this into their policy. I'm sure it's not everybody, but these are the ones that are close to us. Murfreesboro City, Bedford County, Marshall County, Coffee County, Cannon County, Wilson County, Metro Nashville, Franklin Special, Tullahoma, Manchester, and Lebanon Special have all already added this to their policy. Do I have questions or comments?
Ms. Bratton.
Yes, Mr. Tidwell.
So I wouldn't support this policy for several different reasons. One, I don't think we should be restricting public comment in general. I think that if somebody wants to address the board, they should have the right. This thing's hot tonight. I think that if somebody wants to address the board, they have the right to do so. We're all elected officials up here at the board. And I like to hear from the public. It feels very anti-parent to me, so I don't like that. And then I guess most importantly, we just had somebody come address something at the board. They felt like they weren't getting through to the district. They came and addressed the board, and we rectified that problem that same evening. And that was the father, I believe, that came and spoke about the eagle feather. And that got fixed immediately. So I don't see how this would be helpful while other districts may be choosing this option. I don't think it's necessary for our district.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Well, I have a contrary opinion. I believe it, and when it comes to that gentleman, I wish that he had notified one of us on the board. I got no call. I probably would have argued the same thing in his defense, because I thought it was right, and I was glad that we were able to take care of it. But we do have some time before graduation. It's not tomorrow. But I do know that City Council, which my husband sits on, has this same policy, and it really does keep things going and keeps things on actionable items that are addressed. That way you don't get tossed in the weeds and you don't derail a meeting. We haven't had anything derail it in a while, but we've had sometimes early on when I first got on the board and we were still going through COVID that we had quite a bit of going off the rails. And so this would keep us on policy, on the agenda, and if anybody is that adamant about something that they want to bring to us, bring it to us, have us add it to the agenda.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
to the point you just raised, Claire, we do not have an issue with people coming and speaking a bunch of nonsense. I think this looks poorly on behalf of the district and the board for our constituents and our parents. I did speak with the TSBA attorney. His interpretation of the law that you speak to was that that's the floor, meaning like that's the bare minimum that you need to do is allow them to speak on agenda items. I think it's important that we hear what people have to say. Not everything requires an item on the agenda. Sometimes parents need to come speak about a situation and make us aware that isn't something that has to be an agenda item. Sometimes people want to come and compliment us on the job that we're doing. And sometimes they want to come and tell us about something they're unhappy with. They have every right to do that. I have no interest in telling them that they can't. That gentleman did reach out to our district. At least 2 weeks had gone by with no resolution. He came to the board, as he absolutely should have. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I would. So
Yes,
I would
sir.
like to add that, although I appreciate the gentleman coming, that was not an agenda item, and the board needs to be very careful on voting on things that are not on the agenda, because that was not an agenda item. We can make motions, but that's not the way that normally things have to be published before we take action.
Okay.
That was just for him, it wasn't for the entire school district. And we can make motions during general discussion. So, may I?
Yes, ma'am.
So we can talk about that later, Dr. Sullivan.
I just checked with legal counsel.
Well, if we're going by Robert's rules, we can make motions during general discussions. So I too think after the week that we've had with the Christiana school, even when the parent said that she addressed the school board, which to my knowledge of being on here for 6 years, I don't think she has. I think we would be foolish to restrict anyone's First Amendment rights to be able to come and address the school board.
Thank you. Ms. Taylor? They have to go through us. Yeah. Sometimes they'll send an email to us. Sometimes they'll send an email to Dr. Sullivan, different ways, but it has to come through us in some shape, form, or fashion. Anyone else wish to speak? I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve.
I'll take a second. Thank you. We will have a roll call vote, please, ma'am. Sorry, I should have warned you.
That's okay, no problem. Okay. Mr. Hardman? Mr. Scales? Ms. Carr? Ms. Taylor? Mr. Creasy? Dr. Bullion? Dr. Martin? Yes. Mr. Tidwell?
No.
Ms. Darby?
No.
Ms. Rosales?
Yes.
Ms. Sharp? No. Mr. Young?
Yes.
Ms. Maxwell?
Yes.
Ms. Bratton?
Yes,
And Dr. Sullivan?
Yes.
this item passes.
Okay. Next policy is 1.901, charter school applications. This would change the date of the recommendation and the appointment of the review team. So right now, the review team is appointed or recommended by the director of schools at a board meeting in December. We're proposing that that be changed to January of each year.
And I requested that change, if y'all recall back when we had this. We had two initial, and we established two committees, and then we had one of them fall off. And so that's why it doesn't say at its meeting in January, it says a meeting in January, because I'd like to propose it at the last one as possible, depending on what is scheduled, to know how many true committees we're establishing. The way we used to have it was in December, and that followed the way that law used to be, is the charter application started December 1st, but that's changed.
Are there questions or comments on this policy? If I see none, I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Anyone wishing to abstain? Charter school application passes.
Thank you. Next policy is 2.805, which is purchasing.
And Monica, if you don't mind, so we discussed this one at the retreat just a little bit about adding language to it. So my request would be to table this till the next one. But of course, it's the will of this committee.
Postpone.
Postpone.
Postpone. I always mess the wording up, postpone. Okay,
I
postpone.
will entertain a motion to postpone.
Move to postpone.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Anyone wishing to abstain? Thank you. This passes. For postponement,
Tabling means go away. Is that my understanding?
yes, table it.
go away from-
That's what Ms. Darby and I were told.
Okay.
And we're sticking by it,
Got
aren't we,
it.
ma'am? Passes for a postponement. Emergency preparedness plan. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Policy 3.202, Emergency Preparedness Plan. It adds trainings for substitute teachers. And I know this was something that the board took action during a board meeting. And just to enshrine it in policy, the substitute, the language that's highlighted is what the proposed language would be.
And I'm to understand, Dr. Sullivan, this is really kind of already been worked out a little bit. We
Yep.
sort of
Yeah, but-
know where we're going with this. It's just to get it in writing in front of us, so.
And I'll update the board. We have two things. So we have Play Posit that we're working on with our instructional technology team. Dr. Martin's kind of taking the lead on that for all subs and then new subs to have. And then second, we also are working with Defense Systems to do a training for our current ones. So we have both aspects.
Okay. That's great. Questions, comments? I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Anyone wishing to abstain? The emergency preparedness plan passes as a policy.
Thank you. Next item is policy 4.403, which is library materials. It adds two parts. Adds that parents have the ability to opt in for a mature reading list for their student, and then also adds the option to have removed material be available to students who have parent permission. So those are in two different sections. The first one would be in the removal of library materials. The highlighted language is proposed to be added. The committee or the director of schools or board on appeal may require the material to only be accessible to those students that have written permission from their parent or guardian. And then adds a new section to the end of the policy, mature reading list, which would add language that in middle and high school libraries, there would be a mature reading list that would be available with parent permission. And the parent permission would be in Skyward right now, which is our student information system, and parents could complete it during the enrollment and verification stages.
Things like that. Sorry, this would be an opt-in option, right, rather
Correct.
than a opt-out?
Yes.
Okay.
So if they don't check it, it has to be an
Then it's-
affirmative.
Okay,
Yes.
that's the way I thought that was going to look. All right, comments?
Sorry.
Ms. Darby?
Do we know where these came from? Who proposed them?
So I propose this because, for example, we had a recent book that was challenged. And the challenge ended the recommendation of the committee where it's supposed to be for certain grade bands. And I believe that when you have a book that is not under the obscene law, that doesn't meet the requirement of obscenity, or it's an immediate remove. So this will allow for parents to determine if that is acceptable for that child to read it or not.
So I guess I'm confused because this is under the removal portion, and I believe the way you spoke to it, Ms. Ridley, you said for a parent to be able to opt for their child to read a removed book.
No.
But my question is, if it's removed, how are we accessing it?
There's two different sections. So this is under the removal,
Right,
and then there's a section for a mature reading.
right. I'm talking about the removal part that you spoke to. So,
like right now, the only way I can think of it is we have two books that have been challenged, both of them at the high school level. So if a parent opts in, they can let their middle school kid read it.
Right.
That's the best thing I can.
but if they've been removed from that grade band, how are they opting in to read it if it's not there, is my question. If the committee said, we'll keep this in the high schools, we're not going to keep it in elementary and middle,
Right.
and a middle school parent wants their kid to read it, if it's not in the middle school library, how is that?
They're not, this is just for the band, the grade, it's supposed to be for the grade band that it's allowed in. So if we're saying that the book is only accessible to the high school, then it's only for high school, and the parent can opt and choose whether the child can have that book or not.
Right.
In high school, but not in the middle or in the elementary school at all.
Well, I didn't say that, that's what Dr. Sullivan said, but my question still remains, if they've allowed it to stay in the high school, why is this line necessary? Because then the book is still there.
You're not, I don't think you're seeing what
I may not be, that's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, so what this does is that if the committee decides to keep a book in a particular grade brand, it's not in elementary school or middle school, just high school.
Right,
For the child to have access to the book that is recommended only for that grade band, the parent has to say yes or no still. We can't remove the book. It's still in the library.
but then why do they need the permission is my question, because it's there, it's accessible.
Because it may be a topic that you may not want your child to read. It may be something that you may not have.
But then what are the parameters on how we're deciding what's full-scale available and what a parent has to give permission for?
That's why we're creating a reading list that will go into that.
Anything challenged?
I think it's a good point.
Is any,
It's not-
That stays.
is that,
A parent can still say, my child cannot read that. It is giving more parent choice.
But this is saying that they have to have permission from their parent to read it, which to me would say the book is not readily available.
Ms. Bratton,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
if I may, maybe the way I'm understanding, the way I'm reading it as well, is that just in the example of, I can't remember the name of the book, but the book that went through the committee that got removed from middle school to the high school. So if this were to be in place, the way I'm reading it is, if it's in the high school level, then this would not apply. It would apply to the middle school level.
it
No.
will apply to all of it.
All of it, all the high school.
This is an opt-in policy.
You can opt in to allow your child to read off of a mature reading list. You want me to give you an example?
Yeah, use the
Okay.
example from the committee.
Okay. I think I'm saying this right, so correct me if I'm not. In the latest round of books that we had removed, A Handmaid's Tale was not removed. Now, if you've read A Handmaid's Tale, you might perhaps know that I personally think it's the scariest book I've ever read in my life. Because it could happen. It is a dystopian novel. It is set in the future, but it is what could happen in society if things went totally wonky. If you don't want Okay, so it's available, right?
currently.
But if you don't want your child to have access to it, you can not let your child read that book. Am I saying that right? I don't want to.
Exactly. Just like we.
That's not what this
Yeah,
states,
this is
though.
not what this
Yes,
policy
it
is saying.
is.
That's not what that
I
sentence
think your intent's
states.
good, but
No, this policy is, if, for example, we just had the St. Augustine, Heart of a St. Augustine, whatever that book is. It was challenged for it to be in middle school and high school accessible. That means anyone in middle school, anyone in high school can have access to it. I may not want my daughter to read that book. You may want your daughter to read that book. It's up to you. But this says that if it's a book that is not removed and is restricted to several grade bands, you as a parent can say whether you will still want your child to check the book out or not.
But then you would need to write that line to state that a parent would need to send notice that they do not want their child to read that specific book. Not that they will give permission, because the book is there. It's fully accessible. It's not restricted at all. So if they leave it in middle and high school, any middle and high schooler has access to that book, carte blanche. Like, anybody can take it out. So you would be asking the parent to say, my name is Katie Darby. I do not want my child so-and-so to be able to check out A Handmaid's Tale. You would have to be notifying the librarian, this book remained in, I don't want my child having access to it.
Dr. Sullivan, can I say something? Don't we right now, the books that are being restricted, don't we take them out of where it's accessible to everyone and they're behind a different area? They're not even with the regular books, right?
Are they ones that are removed?
No, not the ones that are removed. If there are certain books that are
No.
categories.
No.
I was
No.
told that some people do that.
Oh, they might. Some librarians might
Librarians
actually do that, yeah.
Their
Take the books
collection.
out in the regular area, in public area, and to put them aside for them to not have restricted, so they won't be readily accessible to everybody. That will be the same thing. So if there's a book like Agnes or whatever you want to call that has been challenged, this policy will say, I still don't consent to my child to have access to that. Some parents may give access to the parent, may consent to that, and that's quite all right. That's up to them. But it just gives more parental control of what can be checked out or not checked out in the libraries.
Mr. Tidwell?
So this was based off of Wilson County policy, and so I called somebody from Wilson County today to ask them how this policy actually plays out. And the only books that this applies to is committee books, which we've only had 2 go through the committee. So it wouldn't apply to any of the obscenity law or sexually explicit books that have been removed, because they've been removed from the district. But as far as how the process plays out, when they're recommended, they take them off the shelf. This is according to one of the board members. They take them off the shelf and put them behind the counter or whatever. They no longer have access. That list, which we would have to have a list as well, so that people know what that list is and what's considered mature or not. It can't just be one librarian doing it, not the other librarian do it. We'd have to have somebody, a list of what that book is and what the qualifiers, I guess, of that are. It would have to be, according to, if we're matching Wilson County, those books would be removed from the library and put behind a desk. So they are not accessible. In order to have access to, say, A Handmaid's Tale, if that were to be a book that got removed out, then that's where I think this policy comes into play as it was explained to me. The way that I think it's being perceived currently doesn't match what maybe the intent is. We need to put more parameters on that. Otherwise, this doesn't even affect our district.
So I do like this. I like being able to give parents a little tiny bit of extra control in something like this, because truthfully, folks, not everybody's mature enough to read A Handmaid's Tale. It is that frightening. And if you haven't read it, every one of you need to read it. There she goes, preaching. But let me make, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're not against what this is saying. You like the premise of it. You would just like a little bit more to be added to the language.
I think, yeah, some clarity. So if you're asking just me specifically, then I don't think this would affect, as I'm understanding it, it doesn't affect the obscenity or sexually explicit book.
No, it
That's
would
off the table.
not. Those are gone.
All right, and then the other question would then be, I have two questions to follow up with that. One would be, if we are going to do it the way that Ms. Rosales is presenting it, then I think we would have to add some language in here as to what a book is considered mature. There would need to be a list so that we know across the district what that mature list is. It's not library by library.
No, I think it would be countywide.
And if we're doing Wilson County's version, then those books will be the mature list. So I'm gonna keep using Handmaid's Tale because that's what you've used, but whatever it is. If the Handmaid's Tale fits the description of what a mature book is, and that follows the policy description, that's added to the mature list due to our policy, then that Handmaid's Tale is no longer sitting on the shelves. It's sitting behind whatever, behind a desk or something, but it's listed in Skyward to say, hey,
Right.
here are the mature young adults, whatever the genre would be. Here is the list. If you want your kid to have access to these, you need to sign off on this permission list. That's what I
see
think the
what you mean.
intent is.
Yeah,
but I don't get that out of the
I think that's what she
language.
intends to.
That's exactly what it's supposed to be doing, is having a policy that is uniform across all librarians. There are going to be books that are going to be challenged, and they're not going to be removed because they do not fit within parameters in the language and definition of what the state law is of obscenity. It's what I will consider those books that are gray. And those are the ones that will fall in to say parents can decide whether they will allow their child to read the book or not, because the committee said they're restricted, the recommendation was to restrict it to a particular grade band. When it comes to the mature reading list, this was a thought of as similar to Wilson County does, because they do have a mature reading list where parents are opt-in, but they will have to be opt-out of. And this is all handled through Skyward. And right now, we do not have anything of that nature.
That's true.
That gives parents the, feeling like they have some say-so of what their children can check out or look at. If you want to add a language that you think is be more teeth to say it's not just the books that are being challenged, is books whatever are on a recommended list, that's fine. But this is more of allowing parents to make a decision to say, I still want my child, I still don't want my child, and it's something that's uniform across the district.
Madam
And I
Chair.
think that's good. Wait. Ms. Darby.
I was just going to say, it sounds like, I think what you're trying to accomplish is almost like three separate things. There's the library, complete full access. There's going to be books that are removed because they're extremely explicit. And then there's going to be those that are going to fall not okay for everybody, but don't meet that extreme explicit label, but you feel like they shouldn't be free access to. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correctly? So I don't think this line fits where it's at. I think maybe once we get to the mature reading list, that line might be one that needs to be added, and that's whatever you want to call that section, mature, restricted, whatever, that line probably belongs there to say that parents would need to either opt in or opt out of books under that section. So I feel like we almost have three, does that make sense? Three different types of things we're talking about in total.
Ms. Sharp.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could we table this and look at the Wilson County policy? Postpone, and look at the Wilson County policy? See exactly what they have.
If that is your motion.
I make a motion that we postpone and review the Wilson County, and the verbiage and everything may already be in there to make it a little bit clearer. I
Okay.
did not see that. Mr. Tidwell, would you like to speak to that?
Would you like?
I just had a quick thing. I mean, I'm okay with if the policy committee wants to postpone to look at the lane, I would just like, I think the motive here is correct, and I agree with the motive. I just want to make sure that the parameters are tight. And so my other questions I mentioned before would be what constitutes a book getting on the mature reading list? So in Wilson County, they review 2 books a month, their board does. And out of those 20 books that they've had, I think 8 have been added to the mature book list. I mean, if we have librarians that would like to make submissions or something to this mature list, I'm okay with having that as an option. I just want to make sure that those parameters are there as to what gets a book put on this list, because if we just incorporated it right now, today, nothing's changed.
Yes, ma'am.
Bratton, the books that are being added are the ones that are challenged. With every 2 books that are the ones that are coming before the committee, before the school board, are the books that are challenged. We don't get books that are being challenged every meeting. So they're fattening this reading list, mature list, as they're looking at books that are being mature. And this is pretty much almost identical to what's on Wilson County. If we want to, I will personally think that the books that we will be looking at that will fall in the category of a mature reading list will be in the young adult section, because those are the ones that are the most problematic.
Madam Chair, we have a question. We have a,
That's what I was about to say. We have no, we do not have a second. We have a motion to postpone this until we look at it and add some language. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right. Discussion.
I had one point that's, it's on page 3. So where something as we are looking at postponing this as well that I would like for us to consider is adding, so lines 9 through 25 to where we're talking on page 3 about removal, yeah, right where Monica is on the screen too. We have 2 legal footnotes here, and so lines 10 through 16, what we currently have, 10 through 14, deals with the Library Review Committee state statute. The next line, 17 through 25, deal with the obscenity law. I would like to propose a heading that we add obscene materials or TCA 39-17901, whatever it is, because that's where most of our questions have come from, is how is this book being removed without a committee when there are 2 separate laws that speak to that?
Right.
Just to try to bring some commonality to it.
So your suggestion is between lines 16 and 17 that we put the law?
Right after the, whatever ends up being that number 3 footnote, which is TCA 49-6, I forgot the number.
But we
3917.
might be looking at putting what's right above that, am I right? The committee or the director somewhere else. So we're talking about doing some shuffling here, so.
I think when we were talking about postponement, like the mature reading list, I think Mr. Tidwell is correct. There has to be some kind of guidance on what that list is and what puts a book in that list. Otherwise, even if we approved this today, we really haven't done anything because we haven't given anybody any structure on what that list.
Oh, I think that can be worked on, can it, Ms. Rosales? We can go back and put some language in.
I think the
So-
intent is good.
Yeah, everybody likes the intent, they just want to add to it,
I like it
I
too.
think.
So-
All right, so I don't need to have a roll call vote, do I? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Anyone wishing to abstain? We will postpone this, and Ms. Rosales, if you will come back and take a little look at some things and think about the suggestions made, because they were very good. So we will postpone this and come back with some different language. All right. Yes, ma'am?
Okay, policy 4.406, use of the internet. This was requested by our technology department. It's just adding some language regarding bypassing or attempting to bypass any security mechanism or network filters and accessing offensive messages or pictures. This would be for both staff and students. And then adding, well, just fixing the name of our chief academic officer, the title. And then changing vendor contracts to pre-K, which right now just starts with kindergarten, the way that we have it, but we are entering into vendor contracts for materials, online materials for pre-K as well. So we just want to make sure that all works together.
Questions or comments on this policy? Seeing none, I will take a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Anyone wishing to abstain? We have passed.
Thank you. Next policy is 5.106, application and employment. This would remove the pre-employment physical examination requirement. So right now, the district has a requirement that employees will present a certificate from a healthcare provider showing that they're in good health and don't have any contagious or communicable diseases that might endanger health of school children. This is no longer required under the law. We can ask, the school district can ask anybody, any employee, to show a certificate, but it's not a requirement of pre-employment. So this may be a change that helps us get some more employees. Definitely speed up the process. So they don't have to go and get all that. And I did add in here under employment that we can ask when so required by the board.
They still have to have a TB test?
No.
We do not have to have TB testing. Okay, just wondering. Questions or comments?
Just one comment. The TCA version just says a teacher must submit when required by the local board of education. So that law is not must require, but when required.
Right.
Okay, good. Anyone else? I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Thank you. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Anyone wishing to abstain? This passes.
Thank you. Next policy is 5.303, personal and professional leave. And this comes as a result of our MOU that we entered into with REA. And it would just change that all certified personnel shall be able to retain up to 5 earned personal days. Any personal leave days beyond the 5 shall be credited as sick leave. And again, this is this aligns with the MOU and is also allowed under state law.
Questions or comments on this?
Chair.
Yes, sir.
So just a quick clarification so that everyone's aware. All certified personnel get 2 personal days a year. It's the last MOU of 2018, 19, I don't remember what year it was. We put in, based on your years of experience, you could start, you're not accumulating any extra days, you're just able to roll your days. And so there is no financial aspect to this. It just, instead of certified personnel who don't use their 2 personal days, can roll them up to 5. So it would still take 3 years for somebody to reach this. They can't use they don't get any extra days because of this. They just get to roll them.
Okay. Just like sick days, they just roll up. Okay. And they can roll
Up to 5.
up
Basically
to
a week.
5 personal days. Okay. All right. Questions, comments? Yes. Anybody? Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve. Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Anyone wishing to abstain? This passes. Next.
Next is 5.308, sabbatical leave. This also updates some language for sabbatical leave for certified employees pursuant to the agreement with the REA. And you can see there's a little bit of changes. Certified employees must have 5 years or more of service to be entitled to qualify for sabbatical leave. has to be requested in writing to the HR department no later than May 31st. It's not automatically granted, has to be approved by the director of schools. And then certified employees shall have the opportunity to continue participation at their own expense in group health insurance plans, subject to the restriction of that carrier. And then direct payment shall be made to HR, and doesn't change the way that a certified employee's status for reduction in force procedures still work.
I was classified and removed.
That's exactly what my question was.
I talked to Dr. Anthony about this today.
Okay.
And I asked her, she said they did it just because the MOU only speaks to certified. And so I asked her, I spoke to some EAs today and asked if this would be beneficial. And they said, absolutely, because if they're trying to get their teaching degree, when they have to student teach, they have to leave their job. So I think it's important for us to leave classified in here and keep them included.
Is that a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion to include classified with certified.
Second.
Thank you. Where should that go? Certified employees
Just-
or certified
Just
and
Go back and
classified?
unstrike both of those.
Okay.
You'd have to add them to, I think, anywhere where
Just
it says
employees? Just say-
certified and classified in some of the additions.
Do you want to
Ms.
say
Ridley.
certified and classified employees and leave the and classified in there? Was
Yes,
that your
but you're-
motion?
Yes, and you're going to have to add it to the new language after certified as well.
Okay, so let's look at that just a minute.
The only
And
question I would have is,
classified. Okay,
no, never mind.
okay, no question, all right. And educational leave is not automatically granted by the director of schools. I think, Ms. Darby, you helped us to add that back when we were looking at this, so I think that's good. Any comments or questions? Yes, sir.
I just got a question about the date being moved back, basically 2 months. Does that change anything from the district's standpoint?
No, I would like to tell you that I just believe that I would approve it. It's just going to be very hard for me to approve one, and I've still yet to see one. I just don't anticipate seeing them, because it's very few people who can afford to do that. I mean, you may have somebody who has to go on leave for a year to do some type of doctoral study. Odds are it's going to be a page, so they're going to leave anyways. Unclassified, I could see, because we do have classified staff who that's the only way they can get their degree. I don't foresee. I'd be shocked if we had more than one or two or any year, but
Okay, good.
what they requested.
And Dr. Sullivan, if it works how it's worked in other previous employments I've had, this doesn't really guarantee your position in your job either. You may take the sabbatical, but you still are not guaranteed that you're going to come back and do that same job,
Right.
correct? Yeah.
Because it has to be available, and, yeah, there are lots of factors that go in it. All right, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Do you want to repeat your motion, Ms. Darby?
I make a motion to approve while leaving classified in the policy and adding classified after certified to the new language.
Okay, and we had a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Anyone wishing to abstain? This passes with the new language added.
Thank you. Next policy is 6.3041. This is Title IX and sexual harassment. This was on our last policy agenda, and we postponed it to this one. And I've asked Patricia Lyons, who is our Title IX coordinator, to come and speak to the committee just about the Title IX process and give y'all a little bit of an idea. It is convoluted sometimes, and just give y'all a better idea of how it works and why we are asking for these changes.
I can hear it. Good evening, all. Glad to be here. I came at the behest of my supervisor, Monica Ridley, who told me that we had a great deal of I guess, lack of understanding of the process. So I'm here to hopefully not make it even more difficult. The best way, I think, to go about this is to just give you like a scenario. Typically, the reports that I receive, and you have to bear in mind, this has been done in the corporate business office setting for years, and even in higher education, but applying it for K-12 has been a challenge, but it was given to us to do as of August 2020. And so you have to look at it through a K-12 lens and think about what is the real goal here for our kids, because when we have students that are third graders, fourth graders, they don't know what they're doing is called sexual harassment or things of that nature. So we have to take a step back and think about it from that perspective. So most of my cases will go like this. Susie reports to her teacher or her guidance counselor that Bobby has been making her feel uncomfortable. He's been looking at her and he's been talking about her butt, or he grabbed her leg and she just didn't feel comfortable about that. So she wanted to tell somebody, because that's what she's been told to do. Mom and dad tell your teacher when somebody's making you feel uncomfortable. So that person will then talk to either their administrator or their guidance counselor, who's the person who's in charge of taking those reports and resulting in a formal report that has to come to me. I get a written form that I ask them to fill out that gives me bare bones details of what's going on. When I get that report, I need to try to understand, and the best way for me to understand is to talk to Susie. So then I start setting up Teams meetings, speaking to these students. And so I say, Susie, what's been going on? What did Bobby do to make you feel uncomfortable? Oh, well, he did this, that, whatever. Susie, what do you need to feel supported? Do we need some space? Do we need to create a safe space for you? Does he sit next to you in class? Is he the line leader or are you the line leader? Is this happening in the cafeteria? Things like that. So I start trying to figure out different supports I can put in place. Do we need to do a seating chart to switch up the classroom setting so she's not sitting next to him? Do I need to change how they walk in the hallway? Does he need to be at the front of the line with the teacher to make sure that he's not touching students on the way in the line, just hitting everybody on the butt as they walk in the line, that type of thing? So I'm giving her these supports and putting them in place. Next step, I need to talk to little Bobby. I need to ask Bobby, Bobby, what's been going on? How do you interact with your friends? What's been going on with Susie? He may or may not know what's been going on with Susie. So Bobby, do you think you ever talk to Susie? Do you ever say anything to her like, oh, your hair looks silly, or oh, you have a silly butt, or I'm going to poke you in your butt? Oh, I remember one time, and they'll tell you. Believe it or not, they'll tell you. 9 times out of 10, and then sometimes you get the tears. But in any event, he tells me. So I say, well, Bobby, let me tell you, do you remember when you had that talk with your mom and dad about the no-nos, things that we should not do, respecting personal space? That's my supportive measure, giving him a better awareness and understanding of the things that we cannot do with our classmates to create a safe space. That's a reporting phase. This is just a report. There's not an investigation. There's not consequences. Bobby, you were wrong. There's no presumption of blame, guilt, things of that nature. I have teachers, administrators that still want to say victim, perpetrator, all these terms that are very derogatory, things that are not, this is not an adversarial situation. We're teaching, we're guiding, we're making sure everybody's doing what they need to be doing to be in a safe space. So, once again, this is all reporting. I tell Susie, if Bobby, after I talk to him, continues in this behavior, please let me know. If Bobby comes up to you and tells you, Susie, why did you tattle on me? That was so mean, you're a snitch. Please tell me, because these are considered retaliatory actions. Can't have retaliation. That's immediate cause for disciplinary action under Student Code of Conduct, not Title IX, Student Code of Conduct. Can't give consequences in the reporting phase, okay? This is still reporting. Now, if Bobby continues, because I tell little Susie, Susie, is he still doing that? If he continues to do that, you need to tell your teacher, tell mom and dad, tell Miss Lyons, tell all the people, so that we can have something else happen. And I also, after I have these talks with my students, of course I'm communicating with parents. I'm telling them the full scale of all their options under Title IX, what they can do when we get to that point. Most times, parents give grace. They understand it's the process. Every once in a while, I have a parent coming in hot because we're concerned about what's going on with our kids, of course. We want to keep them protected. We don't want them to be touched. We don't want them to be harassed, things of that nature. But I still have to tell them the process. And they usually do, 9 times out of 10, give grace. And they don't want that student to be, like I said, I want criminal charges. I want this child arrested. Because I do get parents that do say those things. But I have to, once again, talk them through the process, let them know this is how we handle it. So if Bobby continues, that might be a time where we might need to file a formal complaint, Mom and Dad. That's when we can kick in a formal investigation. My administrators are finally starting to catch the knowledge and understand we don't investigate. We don't bring students in. We don't make them admit that they've done some Title IX wrongdoing. Can't do that in the reporting phase. Nothing happens until it's initiated by a formal complaint. And that's when the clock starts ticking on the timelines. And I needed the adjustment because when we adopted the model rules from TSBA in 2020, we had no idea how it was working in practice. And if you go to various districts across the state, you'll see most of them say 60, 90 days minimum for the process because the actual regulation requires 2 10-day review periods. That's 20 days right there. Ours were starting at 20 days. It's not mathematically possible. So that's why I was asking for you guys to review it and decide that 60 days, 90 days would be more optimal because we really need to manage expectations. Because when parents see that 20 days, if they don't have a consequence in 20 days, it's just making them come in even hotter. And that's just not the nature or the intent of the regulation that we have to comply with as a district.
Thank you, Ms. Lyons. So we handed out, it should be loose, not in your packet, some revisions that we made this afternoon. Ms. Lyons, Mr. Reed, and I met and went through the CFR, the Code of Federal Regulations, and just made sure that everything that we're asking for lines up with the CFR regulations. And so please look at what was handed out. It's a stapled. Don't look in your packet, but what we handed out separately. And you'll see that we've changed the investigation time from what we were proposing originally, which was 60 days to 90 days, and then changed the language for the respondent. Does everyone have that? Okay. And I'm sorry, I don't have it up on to put up on the screen, but what it would read is, strike out once a complaint is received, and it would state, timely investigation shall commence upon written notice from the Title IX coordinator to the respondent, and then the investigator shall initiate an investigation in a timely manner after receipt of the complaint. If an investigation is not initiated in a timely manner, the investigator shall provide the Title IX coordinator, or if the Title IX coordinator is the investigator, then the director of schools with appropriate documentation detailing the reasons why the investigation was not initiated within the required time frame. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Lyons while she's here?
I have a question, real quick. You said 2 10-day periods. What was that about again? Because you said it don't really start till day 20.
Once you get into a formal complaint,
Yeah.
you have to provide 2 10-day review periods. One being when I finish my interviews and gather all the evidence, I have to compile an investigative report. Before I submit that to the decision maker, the parties review it to see if there's anything else. They have 10 days to review to see if there's anything else they want to say or contravent what I present. Then after they give me that, then we send it all to the decision maker. And then there's another 10-day period where she reviews my final report plus whatever other things that they gave.
Sure, and that's part of the formal.
That's a total of 20 days.
Yeah, but that's part of the formal request.
Formal grievance process, yes.
I think Ms. Darby had a question.
Can you tell me how many investigations you've done so far this school year?
This school year, we've had one, and that was only employee involved. It was no students involved.
Okay, and how long would you say an investigation typically takes you to complete on average? That might be hard considering you've only had one this year, but I
Right.
don't,
And
do you know how
I
many we
looked
had
at-
last year?
Last year, we had one, but it was dismissed. But I went to I think 2021, 22, to pull one for comparison, and they all present different challenges depending on the time of the year. The one that I had this school year was with teachers, and it was at the beginning of the school year, and I got the report in August. But she was contemplating whether or not she wanted to do a formal complaint. So that took another 10, 15 days for her to decide. Then I had to make sure she was going to be in town to do all the interviews and everything. But that one took me from 8/24, I gave written notice, and then the investigation began on 9/11 because she went out of town, and we were able to start it on 9/11. And I think I finished it up in about a week's time. And then the final report was sent out on October 12th. And then the final decision was received from the decision maker December 14th.
Okay, thank you.
Do you want one with the students involved? And that one, the challenges were, we had 2 breaks. We had Thanksgiving break and Christmas winter break. But the notice went out on the 16th of November. Investigation began 12/14. He had an attorney involved. I had to work around her schedule. The report was completed February 17th, and then he submitted a written response February 25th, and the final decision came out March 7th.
What year was that?
That was it started 2021, November,
Okay.
and was finished by March 2022.
Thank you, Ms. Lyons, appreciate it.
One question. I know that the example that you gave is this sort of elementary school when, you know, kids are not keeping their hands to themselves, but have we had Title IX in high school where, I'm wondering if this would fit
You'd be surprised.
calendar? I mean, I know we probably do, but
Elementary and high school behaviors, pretty much the same, unfortunately.
So you don't
It's
think
the
we
same
need-
kind of diddling type situation. The serious ones that your mind goes to the worst case scenario, those are usually law enforcement driven, and we take a step back and let them handle, if you're talking about sexual assaults, rapes, things of that nature. In high school level, I do get, the majority of my reports are all about butt smacks, grabs, things of that nature. Every once in a while, I have a textbook, sexual harassment, where created this hostile environment based off of continued pattern, pervasive behaviors that made it uncomfortable for them to be in the learning environment.
Okay, so you think the days and everything that you're asking for would work for both?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Sharpen, if it's a true sexual assault that may have happened on our campuses, we take a step back.
Right, I mean,
It is immediately
wouldn't be
reported,
tolerated.
yeah, it's immediately reported to law enforcement. They, do whatever they need to. We support and step back. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just one more thing. Title IX is an option. The formal grievance process is an option to parents, because sometimes you will have things that law enforcement say, oh, we don't investigate that. That's just not something that we would do, but parents still feel the need to find some type of justice, if you will, under something, and that's where Title IX is designed to give them something, but it's also designed to give our respondents super due process, so we have to look at that as well.
Raisha? Oh, yes, Joe, go ahead. Good question. It's my page.
Do we need to add that language?
Maybe we need to add that.
Yeah, I think it says calendar everywhere else. Yeah, it's specified everywhere else.
Yeah, and it looked like it was striked in line 36, calendar days.
In calendar days from.
Catch.
Horatia, we have two sets of policies here. One says 60 days and one says 90. Tell us,
90.
why do you say 90?
I say 90 because that will be the best way to manage expectations, because if we say 60 and we don't get it done in 60, and I've had some that have not been done in 60, then parents are going to hold our feet to the fire, and that's going to be another thing we have to answer to. So it'd be best to err on the side of caution and give yourself the 90 days when, I mean, there have been some that go longer, and you just have to present to me a reason why we had extenuating circumstances where the whatever couldn't be done. Somebody was out of the office on sick leave. We had natural disasters. The school was closed for 20 days, whatever. It could go in longer than 90 days, but I would like to have that safeguard of 90 because I've had some.
Is it still just you?
It's still just me.
Just you.
And we don't have any named other investigators at this time. I really need to go back and redo our Title IX team because that team is not the same anymore.
So if you were on a 2-week vacation,
Right?
not that you
Would
take
not
it,
that I ever will be.
I started to say, I know better, right? Making this up as I go. Then there's not anybody to take over any of this for you?
That is correct.
That's what I needed to know. Okay.
90 days is more reasonable, because usually you have complaints before Christmas break, or
Yeah, that's what she was,
all these things, and you have people gone for a month or two, hard to get things done.
we still do it in the summer, but you could have people that aren't available for investigation or
Delays.
you're available, but are they? So this has really more to do with what you're having to investigate, not necessarily
The more
you.
people you add in, the more schedules you have to coordinate, so.
Ms. Darby?
I went back over this with the attorney over at TSBA. Gosh, these are hot tonight. I feel like I'm super loud. And just one thing that I kind of wanted to bring up, and there may be some differing opinions among attorneys, but there are comments in the sections where the law was changed and why it was changed and things that it speaks to. It's the opinion of the attorney at TSBA that increasing the days to 90 opens us up to more possible legal issues because it creates an opportunity for what they call deliberate indifference. That's why it's written in a manner where if you can't meet the days designated, you can continue to extend beyond that. You just have to provide reasoning why you're going beyond those days. It was also why I was curious how long those investigations have been taking, and they don't seem to take typically longer than 60 days, and if there was a reason why, the law provides for you to provide documentation to that versus giving the expectation that a simple investigation doesn't have to take 90 days, but we're going to take 90 days because it's in policy, could open us up to more litigation potentially. So I'm just bringing that, it was the same thing that I brought up at the last policy meeting. The two 10-day notifications, those occur after the investigation is complete, is that right? Because you're providing them with the investigation results?
There's no delay in us accepting knowledge and notice of a situation. And the case law that I've seen where districts have gotten in trouble for deliberate indifference was when they completely ignored that a student made a report. A student made a report and they did nothing. They didn't give supportive measures. They didn't tell them their options for formal complaints. They actually went out and got an attorney involved before the district did anything. And that's not what this district is doing.
Oh, I'm not saying that
I mean,
it is.
I'm just giving you some
yeah.
insight on deliberate indifference, how I take it like my personal cross to bear to make sure that nobody is being felt like they don't have a voice and it's not being heard. So That will hopefully be that's my charge as Title IX coordinator, to make sure this district never faces a deliberate indifference.
The 10 days that you're talking about, though, where you're providing the investigation, those are the results of the investigation, correct? Where you're giving them, here's the investigation results, and they have 10 days to respond to you?
10 days to respond, to review the information that I came up with during my investigation. Investigation is probably going to take from the beginning of receiving a report to the completion of an investigation is going to take more than 10 days.
Right, no, I'm saying those 10 days that you're speaking to don't start until the investigation is complete. So they're not part,
the first review period.
they're not part of the 90 days. So I know TSBA policy is written with 20 days in there. Mr. Torres said, you know, they represent over 100 districts in there, and he said he's only had 2 or 3 ever change that 20 days. So what he's telling me is the majority of districts are still at 20 days in the state of Tennessee. So I'm just providing the information that I got, trying to help watch out for the legal side of the district. It's not saying anything about Ms. Lyons or how she does her job. This is just the advice I was given by the attorney at TSBA.
The regulations that provide the hearing process do not stipulate time for the investigation. It just has to be completed in a timely manner. And the industry standard is to 60 to 90 days. That's how it's roll. So going to 90 days to complete your system not really be a limited amount of time. And then complete the investigation. And it's not tied to that 60-day deadline that they otherwise would have to adhere to.
They're not tied to that deadline. They can extend it as long as they give representation of why they're having to extend it. And the comments speak to specifically on the, what do you guys call it, the CFA or whatever? CFR, not making those dates based on examples of time consuming it. Like they're pretty much saying, don't make it this extended time period. That's what, it doesn't give you a specific amount of days, but it's telling you not to go with like a super expanded time. And I feel like that's what we're doing. We're kind of pushing out like what's the most amount of time we would need, instead of saying if 60 days seems to be the average, saying 60 days. And if it has to go beyond that, the law speaks to that and says you can do that. You just have to provide reason why it's taking you so long. Because during this time of the investigation, you're still leaving that child open to potential further harassment while that investigation is taking place. So the longer we take to complete an investigation, the longer it's leaving us open to further issues for that student.
No, ma'am. That's why the supportive measures have been put in place, because we're not just leaving them open to further harassment. We're taking steps to prevent that from happening that's what the supportive measures are for.
Correct, but we don't have control over the students either. It doesn't mean that they're not going to. So it's just,
But once
we don't
they're
have
put
to
under-
agree. I'm just telling you what the legal advice was from TSBA.
But in practice, what happens is we put the supportive measures in place, and if a student, for whatever reason, does not follow those supportive measures, it has now been made a directive, administrative directive, and that's a direct disciplinary, that's a direct reason for disciplinary action under student code of conduct. Once you debunk or basically just don't listen to us and you retaliate or you reoffend or you can continue to do the things that we told you not to do, you can get disciplined for that under student code of conduct, where you can't under Title IX until the Title IX decision maker says that this is the final determination, Title IX wrongdoing was done, and these are the consequences.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lyons. Do I need to entertain a motion?
I move to approve the policy with a 90-day extension.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Bratton,
Yes, sir.
as we vote onto this, do we add the calendar part, calendar date?
Yes, yes. Could you add that?
Yes. I would like to amend my motion to add the words calendar days to line 34, where it says 10 10 days, it should say 10 calendar days. Sorry, couldn't say that word, I don't know why. And to approve the policy with the 30 days.
And I do have a second, is that correct?
A second.
All right. I'm going to call for a roll call vote.
Mr. Tidwell?
Question, did you say 30 days?
Yeah, I think 30 was missed. Where'd 30 come from? I heard
It said 90 here.
90.
It's 90.
She said 30.
Did I say 30?
Yeah.
I meant to say 90. I'm sorry. I thought I said 90 first.
I thought you said 90, and I
Yeah,
seconded
thought I
the
said
90, not the
Yeah,
30.
It's 90 days. Let's be clear. Do I need to make the motion again?
Make your motion again.
Okay, so I move to approve the policy with the 30 days in addition to adding
With 90 days.
with 90 days, 90 calendar days, and then adding the verbiage on line 34, 10 calendar days on line 34.
And I will second that.
All right. Now I will call for a roll call vote.
Mr. Tidwell?
Yes.
Dr. Martin? Dr. Gulliam? Yes. Mr. Creasy? Ms. Taylor? Ms. Carr? Mr. Scales? Mr. Hartman? Dr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Ms. Bratton?
Yes.
Ms. Maxwell?
Yes.
Mr. Young? Yes. Ms. Sharp?
No.
And Mr. Rosales?
Yes.
And Ms. Gordon?
No.
This passes into policy. We need to get rid of
Get rid of the one that was in the
one that was in
packet.
here. Okay.
Thank you.
One that was stapled, I think, is the one that,
One that was stapled
Stapled,
we keep.
yes.
We got that. That will give everybody a chance to remove one policy and put the other one. All right?
Next policy is 6.402, physical examinations and immunizations. This would add physical examination requirement for clubs that involve physical exertion or athletic activity. This was a request from our athletic department to add this requirement. So right now, we'll call it club sports, don't require physical examination. So things like rugby, ultimate frisbee, dance team, walking clubs, archery, band would be included in there. Anything that's, kids are outside in 90-degree weather, exercising or doing physical activity for hours, we want to make sure that they are healthy and can participate in those.
Questions or comments on this policy?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So this is club rates. Just reading some of these, like archery. I guess my concern would be some of these sports, I don't want there to be a barrier for people to get in, students to get into them that may not have the funds. Would that?
No, because we have free physical
3
days.
days.
Oh, perfect.
Took care of that.
I like that.
But that's good
Wish
to
it was
know,
all that
because not
easy.
everybody knows
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I didn't know we had ultimate frisbee.
I'm really shocked that dance team, I would have thought they'd have to have this from,
So
I
did
mean,
I.
that's very,
So did I.
Very, very physical, so.
Yes. Yes.
Would you please make that a motion? Include band. Do I have a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Anyone wishing to abstain? We are going to add the word band right after archery and then ETC.
I was thinking the same thing.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Do we need to specify marching band?
Probably.
We need to specify marching band, sir. This is coming from a principal point of view, and you're going to know. So, right, and
Or we
they're out
change it to
there
marching band.
really in some unpleasant weather conditions, so.
You got a jazz band and a performance band.
Could I have Mr. Creasy change his
Absolutely.
motion?
We changed it to performance band because there could be
Oh,
some-
performance band.
Yeah, because there are going to be some bands that could be out there in 100-degree weather, but they're not the marching band.
But they're the jazz band?
They're the
or some-
jazz band or.
But that is a
Yeah,
performance
yeah.
band, okay.
So I will say
Sir,
performance.
could I have you change your motion, please? Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Anyone wishing to abstain? We are going to add the word performance band. That's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Next policy is 6.413, prevention and treatment of sports-related concussions. This is also from our athletics department, and it would just add clarifying language for removal from athletics due to a concussion, and then who can certify that that student can return to play. And not all that language is new, but it was going to be too fragmented for me to break it apart, so I just, so I just gave it to you all in one section.
Questions or comments? No one? I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Anyone wishing to abstain? This policy passes.
Thank you. That concludes the existing policies, and moving on to number 6, which are new policies. So potential policy 1.303, which is consultants. This would be a new policy for the engagement of professional consultants.
I would like to ask, I don't understand this policy, so.
Ms.
if
Braden?
some- Yes, sir.
I can get to that.
Okay.
So this was added whenever the real estate stuff was all getting talked about. This
Okay.
was just added as like a third option,
Okay.
but we can remove this. This can be pulled
Okay.
back off, so,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay. The policy has been removed.
Because we straightened out
by
the
people.
other options that we,
Okay.
Okay, so we'll
this can be removed.
just kind of.
Motion to remove.
We'll just remove this policy by the person who submitted it. Remove.
Do you need a formal motion, probably?
I don't know, do we have to have a formal motion to remove this if the person who presented?
Table it. Will we table it? Because table kills, remember?
Hey, let's kill it.
Ooh, yes, send this to Somerset.
I actually
We've never
asked her
done
to
that.
put it on.
Never mind.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I know, I was looking at Ms. Darby like,
Wait, okay,
I
wait.
am so
What do we
sorry.
need to
Ms.
do?
Darby.
Just consult.
I added it on here because then we don't have to go through all of the policy language in the purchasing section. This would allow us to just create an RFP for the real estate stuff, which I had found an example of that I had given to Mr. Reed and Ms. Ridley, so that the board can look at an RFP, and then we can use it when we need it, and when we don't need it, we don't have to use it, and it doesn't have to be this super specific policy. Those things would be more in the RFP. Those specifics of what we wanted would be in that RFP.
I still don't understand. Why would we need this if we have something else about land acquisition and whatever?
Well, that was stuff we were looking at adding in the purchasing policy. This is a pretty standard policy, according to TSBA, for school boards to have, and this would just allow us to go out for an RFP for the real estate agent.
But it doesn't say
RF.
real estate agent. It says professional consultant.
They are professional consultants.
But does that mean every professional consultant?
I would assume it means we could engage with, it. I would guess, but I believe Mr. Reed said we've been able to do that without this policy too.
Right.
Yeah, so we don't need a policy.
I don't know that we need a policy on this. Oh, that was easy. Sure.
I was looking at site selection, so I had no idea what we were talking about. I was really confused.
You're dismissed.
ahead.
Dr. Sullivan, you're dismissed. Okay.
My concern with this one would be, I understand for the real estate aspect, but we have consultants on a weekly basis that work in our schools. I don't think that was the intent, but.
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
But this way, we just won't put it here. We'll look at something else. So we'll remove it.
That's fine.
Okay. There we go. All right, now, site selection and acquisition.
I was ready for that one already.
You're ready for that one, okay.
Okay. Proposed policy 2.9002, site selection and acquisition. This would be a new policy for school site selection and acquisition.
All right, comments or questions on this?
So I worked with Jeffrey to put this kind of together. It kind of puts a formality of how we go about with land acquisitions and then working with outside parties. This is also in helping with making sure that when we are looking at land, that we are talking to the right people who were the owners, or if they do have a real estate agent, that we get information about their relationship as a seller agency type. So this kind of puts more of a formality through that whole process and how it's going to be vetted and where all the requests for land acquisitions, where it can be funneled to and how they're going to be presented before the board.
One of the things I like that you put in here is number 17. And that just kind of takes care of everything. When it says the director of schools is authorized to develop procedures to implement this policy. So it's kind of a suggestion, but then the director of schools really has more of a say in this. Okay, questions or comments about this? Anyone? Yes, ma'am.
Me again, surprise. I guess, I don't know if this would be a question for Mr. Reed. In a situation where an owner wants to appoint a designee, but not necessarily a real estate agent, what does that look like? Because this is saying we have to deal with the owner or their realtor or their attorney. But if, let's just say someone is dealing with medical issues and so they want, their parent or their uncle or whoever to kind of be the point of contact, what does that look like?
Well, legally, you have to have a copy for someone to legally act on behalf of the person.
Okay.
Or a membership is for that person. So if you, legally, that person if someone had not gone to that extent to get that type of legal document done, then you could, if the board wanted to continue with them on faith that this person had authority to deal, you do that, but then you run the risk of.
This is just for the purchasing purposes,
Yes.
correct? Okay.
Yes. When you would wait to get a contract signed, you would want the owner, their attorney back, or a power of attorney to sign off on that contract.
Okay. My other question would be, I think it's under compliance on A. Parcels of land must be vetted by a director's designee before presenting the land before the board. Are we still going to ask that they come before the board to let us know what their findings are so that we know what land has been looked at and discarded, for lack of a better term, and which ones we're still continuing to look at? I think it's important for the board to know, like, this property was brought forth, and if Mr. Lee says this is not going to work because X, Y, Z, fine and good, but I just don't want them to be like, he's dismissed it on his end and we know nothing about it, and then people are...
So it doesn't change that. It's still the process because it's still vetting. You're still vetting. When Trey Lee, for example, comes to us, he's vetting the land and he's telling us whether it's good or bad because it's been vetted. So the key word here is that it has been vetted by somebody, and that's an appointed by whoever Dr. Sullivan wants that person to vet the pieces of land. So they will give us the recommendations of whether we should move forward or not forward for X, Y, Z, because they looked at it, they went out there, they did all the things that they normally are doing right now. It's not going to change that. It's just assigning someone. Dr. Sullivan has the authority to assign who's going to do that vetting.
Can we add language that says presenting the land before the board on whether or not to move forward, or something of those?
It provides me clarity, so I like that.
Yeah, that's fine.
So, Ms. Darby, would you tell us again what you'd like? What line was that?
It's under number 2, or I guess that's an I and an L, I'm not sure. Compliance. On page 3. A says the director of schools is responsible for recommending property for acquisition to the board. Any parcels of land must be vetted by director's designee before presenting the land before the board and whether or not to proceed.
That's good, yep.
That was your motion.
Yes, ma'am, sorry, that's my motion.
Questions? Comments?
Let's vote on that motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Anyone wishing to abstain? We will now add the language and whether or not to proceed. Now we'll go back to the whole entire policy. Let's take a look at that. Is there anything else before we vote on the policy? Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the current policy with the addition that we just voted on as is written.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Anyone else like to make a comment or have a question? We will vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Anyone wishing to abstain? This policy passes.
Thank you. Next policy is proposed policy 3.2051, school resource officers' involvement and curricular implementation. And this would add a new policy for SRO's involvement and curriculum implementation.
Do I have questions or comments? Wait a minute, hold on. I've lost my place.
It happens.
Oh, gosh, there's so much. Okay, all right. Dr. Sullivan.
Yeah, ultimately, I don't think this changes a whole lot of how we operate. I had questions around it at first, but ultimately it just puts in policy what we expect and what's in the job description of our SROs. The part that I asked to be added was that the very last one, if an SRO fails to comply or is unavailable per policy requirements, the director will collaborate with the sheriffs to address the noncompliance issue, because I was very leery, I have to uphold policy, I was very leery about putting something in policy over employees that weren't my employees, and so I felt like that satisfied that, which is why it's in a little bit different type.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would have those same concerns, and I'd be concerned how we would manage this.
Yeah.
How will it be managed?
Conversations with Barry Hendrickson and the sheriff if somebody doesn't follow it. Because right now, to give you a little bit of history, Mr. Young was here, our SROs were very involved in our schools as far as teaching lessons. They're still involved in our schools. Probably during the No Child Left Behind Act days, we removed a lot of our SROs from teaching in classes because of the accountability and not wanting to give up class sessions. I mean, I know as a principal, I never wanted to give up any time for anybody to talk because of the accountability. One of the first things that I did was talk with them about getting back into the school. We had the Travis Manning Foundation that we looked at. SROs feel very confident in their curriculum, which I've still yet to see, but I'm hoping to get it at some point. But all that aside, this puts in policy the expectation to our principals that we expect your SROs to be teaching lessons, and then to your SROs, you're expected to be teaching lessons, not just sitting in your office.
Which I think they really want to do.
I'm glad you clarified that, because when I was at Riverdale, all of this stuff, the high school, that was done. I just assumed
Not
it was going on everywhere. Okay.
Mrs. Bratton?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So this policy is a policy that I've been working with Captain Barry Hendricks out of a desire that they're wanting to see things being done uniformly across this district, because there's some schools that do it well and there's some schools that do not do it well, and he wants to come back and bring it to where it was back, like how he understood that the SROs were interacting with the schools and engaging with the students back in 2018. And so I've met with him, Captain Barry Hendricks, along with a few other SROs, also with one of their lead teachers, Carrie, I forgot his last name.
Nelson.
What is it?
Nelson.
Nelson, thank you, Carrie Nelson, and they're also working with creating some type of training that will help those SROs that may not feel as comfortable to be in front of the students to give this type of engagement with the curriculum. The curriculum is something that they already have, they meaning the SROs, so they will be providing the curriculum. It will be coming out of their budget. This will not change the budget as far as what the curriculum is being used. It's very, what is going to be taught and how it's going to be taught is going to be different per school type. So for elementary schools, they're going to have more sessions that are more character-based traits. And so they're going to be sessions that are going to be for different grade bands. And then the middle school and high school, they're going to be shorter, condensed sessions that are going to be very specific about specific things that are really geared towards them. So they're going to be handling the structure of that, what the topics and what they're going to be talking to that's going to be the responsibility of the SROs. So this is just going to help with mitigate that and kind of give the SROs more engagement with the students, because that's what they want. They want more engagement.
Mr. Tidwell?
This could be a positive thing. Do you know when that curriculum might be available?
It's available right now.
I'll still try to get a copy. I can reach out to Barry and get a copy of it.
Yes,
You have
and
it?
I apologize because you had asked me to show you that, and I apologize for that because I do have copies of it, and I can bring that to you tomorrow. I have the elementary one, so.
Thank you
I'll share with
for
everybody.
working with them on this. I think this is a very positive move.
Absolutely.
Other questions? Ms. Darby?
Mr. Rosales, what, when it says consisting of 6 lessons per period, can you tell me what that, like, are you talking about per semester or?
So I believe they're in, what is their grading? Is it 9 weeks? So during the 9 weeks, I think.
Oh, per quarter?
It's whatever, how many, is it 4 of them or 6? So how many?
I'd recommend per semester
Per semester, okay.
instead of per period, because that's,
6 lessons per semester?
yeah.
Okay,
Because then you have an additional 2 extra classes for first, third, and fifth, and then you're almost hitting every week,
okay,
every other week.
that's fine. We can,
So change,
per period to per
is
semester.
that okay?
Yeah.
All right,
that'd be
I just
perfect.
wanted some
That's-
clarification. 'cause I
per
wasn't
semester.
sure.
Yeah, that works, that's okay.
What, I was going to
Well, I mean,
say,
that's a lot per
it's 6 per semester. What if it was 3 per semester or 6 per year?
Well, there's 6 total, so it doesn't matter.
So then that would be
It doesn't
3 per
matter.
semester.
We just, yes, it's just,
6 lessons for the year.
Per year?
Okay,
yeah.
so,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's 6 classes altogether for Ks 2 and 4th, but first, third, and 5th grade, they get 2 additional extra classes.
So per year then.
so do we want to say consisting of 6 lessons per year?
Or you can
Okay.
say academic year. if you want.
Academic year is even better, per academic year, like that. Sounds very, very professional.
And one thing that this policy will do is something that I didn't realize that the SROs used to do, and that is if in your middle school and high school, they will talk to the kids and kind of tell them what behaviors will constitute them to get an explicit type punishment, like where you could actually get arrested.
Yep.
So I think we need to get back into that, and for the students to understand that there are going to be major consequences for them if they do certain type of behaviors, and they kind of get a warning and an awareness of what those are. I know some schools may do that, but my understanding, I have schools that are not doing that today.
I wish this had never left. I'm just going to tell you right now, I was there for this. It was very, 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 very vital to the health of the high school. Some of these kids don't get the training at home that you would think they did, and a lot of them just don't realize, yes, what you're doing can lead to really severe consequences. And sometimes you have to lay it out in black and white to them. And I'm so sorry that this ever went away, because it should have been in and it should have stayed. This was a great, the camaraderie between the students and the SROs has to be good. They have to know that they've got someone they can talk with and can lean on when stuff happens. And this is important.
I think with things changing as they have, with children just not realizing, you can't just say, I got a gun, or you can't just do something on the internet, or they don't always understand that. So it would be nice if these people could let them know there are new rules. There's a new sheriff in town, and the consequences that we do in Rutherford County are very serious. So I'd like to know that there's some proactive rather than reactive.
Can I add?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. One thing I would, just the other portion of that is I could see a SRO who is newer saying something too far that scares a kid, which
Yes.
there's some value in that. But if we have issues, then just trust that I'll address them, because I mean, that's going to happen. We're going to have some parents who say, I don't want a police officer talking to my kids. Like, there's going to be that side of it as well. So just be aware of it.
We trust you, Dr. Sullivan.
Right.
That's why you're at the helm.
Well, we always say we're going to make you do it.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to say, being that the board in and of itself, part of our responsibility is curriculum, I just speak for myself, I'm not comfortable voting on this without having seen the curriculum, so I would like to postpone it, and I'll make a motion to postpone until we can see the curriculum that they'll be using.
The curriculum literally is cartoon drawings. I mean, that's what it is.
I haven't seen it, you've seen it. I think it's only fair that the board get to see something you're asking us to approve.
Is that a motion?
It was a motion.
Did I hear a second? Thank you very much. So you would like to, wait a minute, Dr. Sullivan.
I do believe it is in there as a policy on curriculum that the board adopts all curriculum. I believe that. Let me pull it up.
I love this idea. I just would like to see what I'm being asked to approve. It's that simple.
They're using this curriculum right now in Blackman Elementary School, because I was there. They're using this curriculum for the elementary schools right now. They've been using this curriculum for a long, long time now, since 2008.
Call the question, madam.
Question has been called. We need to hear a second for question.
Second.
We need to vote on question. All in favor say aye. 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 All opposed, no. Anyone wishing to abstain? Question has been called. We now have to have a vote on the motion. The motion is to postpone.
Just to postpone so we can review
Can
the
I ask how
curriculum.
quickly we could bring it back?
No, you can't say anything else. I'm so sorry.
Ask a question.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Once question has been called, you can't do that. Anyone else? All right, so we need to vote on whether or not to postpone this until the next meeting.
I'm fine with revisiting it at a board meeting, if that's what everybody wants to do.
No, you can't. I don't think you can do that. I think it has to be revisited at a policy meeting.
Mr. Reed,
Yeah.
does it have to, I guess is the question.
So it would have to be postponed.
When is the next meeting?
Well, we hadn't said it yet.
Well, it'll be probably.
It'll be before the start of the next school year.
That's what I was wondering, this before the start of the next school year, so that everything can be in place, because I do want to talk about the next policy being in place. Okay, it's a good question, clarifying question. So question has been called? I'm so sorry, question has been called, and we're going to have to vote. All in favor of postponing this? You want to do a roll call? Okay, we can do a roll call. Dr. Sullivan has requested a roll call.
Ms. Darby?
Yes.
Mr. Tidwell?
Yes.
Dr. Martin? Dr. Gullion? Mr. Creasy? Ms. Taylor? Ms. Carr? Mr. Scales? Mr. Hardman? Dr. Sullivan? Ms. Bratton?
Yes?
Ms. Maxwell?
Yes.
Mr. Young? Yes. Ms. Sharp? Ms. Rosales?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay, so we are going to postpone this until our summer meeting. We don't know exactly when we're going to have it, but it will be before school starts, so we can get that done.
Whenever we get all the legislative updates from TSBA.
That is true. We will have legislative updates. We may have to add some things. We need to see that curriculum, right. All right, and then we have one more policy.
Last but
Oh,
not...
wait, pardon me.
I think the curriculum needs to come before the board before the policy, so it probably needs to come before the board.
Wait, time out, because this curriculum is being used right now in Blackman Elementary School and and it's in campus school, and so now we're saying that we're needing to approve a curriculum that is being used right now in the schools. It doesn't make any sense at this point if we're not going to approve a policy with a curriculum due to a curriculum that is currently being used in our elementary schools. It makes zero sense right now.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, sir.
One thing I'll add is that I was over curriculum and instruction and now being director of schools going on 5 years, and I've never seen it.
Okay. We need to see the curriculum, so we
I'm
will.
not saying that we do not.
We've asked
But
for
what
it numerous
I think the clarification is that if this is not something that's being approved and is being used in our schools, then shouldn't we go and say, hey, you cannot use it at this school right now? Because right now it is being used. This curriculum is in our schools and they're being used right now. So it makes no sense to me that we are bringing the curriculum that is being used at different schools. So either we're going to have to tell the SROs that they cannot use this curriculum that they've been using now for the past 5 years.
Mr. Tidwell?
If I'm understanding this correctly, the purpose is to make it uniform across the district. So at this point, if the curriculum hasn't been approved, then yes, I would say it shouldn't be used anymore for the time being.
Well, we have postponed, and we will get the curriculum and bring it before the board,
Let's try to get it before the April 4th meeting, so
which
realistically.
would be good.
You're probably not looking at
We're-
any weeks.
A week.
Great.
2 weeks, counting spring break. School resource officers, SROs, and nursing staff participation in safety days.
Yes, this is proposed policy 3.2052, which would add a new policy for annual participation of the SROs and nursing staff in safety days.
Okay. Francis, did you bring this policy?
Yes,
here?
so
Would you want to talk
this is
about?
another policy that I worked with on our nursing staff, and Shanna's here, with Patty Oser, and also with our SROs. This is another way of having, again, a uniformity across the district of how certain things are being done right now. There's some schools that do an amazing job, and there's some schools that do not do any of that. So this policy will allow SROs and the nursing staff to have a dedicated time during the safety days, one in August and then another one in January, of particulars of what they are able to do and share with. One thing that it allows is for nurses to have a time within that, I think it's, I can't read it, it's the block of time that is listed there, I think it's 1.5 to 2 hours. It gives them 45 minutes where they can speak in front of the staff and kind of go over things of like how the process to send a child to the school, to the nurse's office, go over some medical procedures, because there may have some kids that may need a little bit more attention. They will also go through some safety procedures as well. And then with the SROs, they will also go through all the drills and all the drills and safety procedures that they can encounter throughout a school year that we have drills for, and that is in the August session. And then in the January session, they've asked to have a table talk series with the SROs, with the crisis team. And I believe they did that in one of our schools this year. I believe it was I think it was the evacuation team, where they have everyone that's in that team will be in a table, and they just discuss about different procedures and what have you not. And it gives an opportunity for the staff to have a Q&A type of thing. This is something that they are really wanting and desire. It also allows Patty to work with the two offices and kind of coordinate this and making sure that it can be followed. And it also involves the nursing staff to be involved in this as well.
Okay. I have started working also with Patty and Chris Clark about the Stop the Bleed training that we're trying to get in here. And I think you have talked.
Yes.
Or Chris Clark is talking to the nurses
Yes,
about doing that. Am I?
Yeah. So I met
Come on
with
up
the
here just a
nurses.
minute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
On it. Tell me what you know.
Just in conversations with Rutherford County EMA, Ms. Rosales and Patty, and just a greater focus on Stop the Bleed training for the
Yes.
staff. We already offer a self-guided training for staff that's done in August through a required PowerPoint that covers other things. That was already done this August, and now each staff member has now had a chance to be at the New Vision training. They just don't have hands-on practice, so we did offer optional hands-on practice for staff to come and get some practice. What Ms. Rosales was, the intent of this was during that time that nurses already do a presentation to staff at the beginning of the year along with other staff members who present, they would just demonstrate again how to do those tourniquets. They already do, we have a pre-prepared PowerPoint that changes annually just based on best practice, because in the medical profession things change very rapidly. But each nurse would have the exact same PowerPoint. They're going to go over this PowerPoint.
Okay. That's what I'm wondering, yeah.
And
Uniform across the.
right, yes, ma'am. And in that PowerPoint, they would have a link to the National Stop the Bleed, which is a little bit watered down than what was presented at New Vision. It's more for lay people, so it's not focused for medical professionals. It's focused more for teachers or for people who aren't medical professionals. So we would show that video again, and then they would go over other things. Most of our principals do a phenomenal job of giving nurses time to do all of this, but every now and then we do have some principals that say you've got 5 minutes.
Okay.
So I think that was when she asked.
This would make it so that everybody got a little bit more than that.
Right, and it may not take 45 minutes, it may just take 30 minutes, but that was the intent, Ms.
Before
Rosales'
you
intent.
make a whole lot of decisions, I would like to be in on that Stop the Bleed. I want to know what's going on,
Yes.
because I've already started
Absolutely.
working with that.
So I'm going to speak into the Stop the Bleed, because we did meet with Patty, Chris, yourself, and what was the other guy's name?
Mike Johnson.
Mike Johnson. In trying to have a policy that will get the hands-on application side of the Stop the Bleed in a manner that is a training that's continual every 3 years or so. And one of the hurdles that we're having is how we're going to get everyone through and how many trainers were able to do that. And so there's still some conversation around the nurses providing that and what we can give, how they can be compensated, because the SROs, they have a little bit more leeway and flexibility in how they can be compensated. Since they're not a part of our budget, they can get comp time. So one thing we were going to look at is talking to HR to see if there's something of that nature that can be for nurses so that we can increase the pool of trainers that we will need to train the employees. And so there's still a little bit of things to work through and figure out how to implement such a policy that is doable and feasible, and and 3 years makes sense to do.
This is step one.
This is
Basically,
step
this
one.
is
This is
kind of
step one. And
Okay.
so, as far as the curriculum is concerned about the Stop the Bleed, she's been working with and speaking into that curriculum with, I'm so sorry.
Mike Johnson.
Yes, Mike
Doris
Johnson.
Clark.
Sorry.
And what the nurses would do during this day is not that curriculum. That curriculum that they presented is a 2-hour training, which is very intense
It's a
training.
national training.
Well, theirs is not the national Stop the Bleed training. What the nurses would do in August is show the national Stop the Bleed. It's a branded training. It's so it's different than what Rutherford County EMA. That would be very intense training, which is phenomenal. I want my nurses to do that training.
I want everybody to do that.
I think what
I
you're
don't
saying
want
is the
much, just
logistics of it.
6,000 people
Yeah.
to be
Yeah,
trained
so
on
we're
that.
just trying to figure that out. But Ms. Sheena has been very instrumental because she's been able to speak with Mike into saying, okay, this training is great, but the curriculum, can we make some changes so that it'll be better suited for the audience that it's intended for? So we still have to go through we still have to get the curriculum verified so that our teachers can get professional services credited for that. And so there's still some things that we've got to go through. But as far as trying to get across the board, Stop the Bleed training, that is something that has been worked on behind the scenes a little bit.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yeah, first, I was admittedly probably against this at first because I felt like it put restrictions on our principals and our school staff. So there's a couple things. First, at the very beginning of the school year, school staff does not have enough hours to get in all the required things that we have to do anyways. And so adding in additional hour and a half or 45 minutes, I didn't know where the time was going to come from. But having the extra safety day that Ms. Darby proposed last year and put this in, this will somewhat remove some of those things and put them on the safety day. And then work with Ms. Rosales. I supported it because like number 7 was my big ask, was that like we had with defense systems, because that was powerful and I didn't want to go against having something like that to where the way that it was worded, it would limit you to be able to do a district-wide thing for everybody. So that bullet 7, in the event of a district-wide safety meeting, the time allocated for SROs, and I'd like to request we had SROs and nurses.
Okay.
Should have added SROs.
Sorry?
And nurses?
SROs and nurses. I should have
Okay.
caught that. May be subject to change to accommodate the obligations priority established by the director and the board. So that,
That was a
Is that
like we
okay
did
if
with
we
the-
add that to the policy? Okay.
that way if we had something like we did last time, then the times changed because defend was the priority.
Well, it looks like we're covered.
I did like that aspect
Yeah.
because it put into policy that if we had an emergency to where we had to respond and one of the first questions is going to be, what did you do on your safety days? It gives us a little bit of backing of what we did.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you so much. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. Do I hear a second? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Anyone wishing to abstain? Policy passes.
That's it.
That's the end. We will not be meeting again probably until July.
And I do want to say we had Ms. Rigsby, who could not be here because parent-teacher conferences are ongoing right now. So she's a teacher and had parent-teacher conferences.
I'll entertain a motion. Ms. Darby?
Move to adjourn.
Thank you. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. Anyone wishing to abstain?
Or stay.
We are adjourned.